Today we are going to practice a couple of things. First, it all relates to factoring. First, I just want to go over how to factor by GCF, by grouping, and by trinomial grouping. So, let's start here. Let's start by remembering GCF. How many number of terms, or what number of terms do you need to be able to factor by GCF? Well, it could be 2 terms, it could be 4 terms, it could be 3 terms, it could be any number. Any number. How many terms do you need to do grouping? Must be 4. How about trinomial groupings? Well, that kind of gives it away. A trinomial is a polynomial with 3 terms. Okay? So here's the review. Oops. One more time. There we go. Okay, here is a binomial. It only has 2 terms. We notice that it has a GCF. First, you look at the number part. In this case, it's 8 is the greatest common factor of both terms. Then you look at the variables. Which variables are found in both terms? Well, there's 1b found in both, and there's 1c that's found in both. That looks like a C. I'm going to erase it. That's supposed to be a parentheses. Better. Okay. Once you have the greatest common factor, you need to ask yourself, what do I need to multiply my greatest common factor by in order to get this? This is distributive property in reverse. 8 times what equals 8? Just 1, so I'm going to leave it blank. B times what equals B? Just 1, so I'm going to leave it blank. C times what equals C squared? C times C. We copy the plus sign. 8 times what equals 24? 3. B times what equals B? Just B. C times what equals C? Just 1. So 8BC times C plus 3 should equal this. First thing we do to check, to make sure that we got the greatest common factor, is look inside the parentheses. Are there any other common factors that we forgot to take out? No. We double check our multiplication. Does it work out? 8 times B times C? Yes, it does. Grouping. 4 terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no common factor in all 4 terms. So, to do grouping, I like to use an area model. I draw a nice box. I put the term with the highest degree in the first box, 18x squared. I put the term with the lowest degree in the last box, that's a 5. These middle terms, it doesn't matter where they go. Negative 3x here. Now we find the greatest common factor in each column and each row. The greatest common factor of 18 and 30 is, I think it's 6. Greatest common factor of x squared and x is x. Greatest common factor in this row, there isn't one, so I write a 1. Greatest common factor of this column is a 3 and an x. Greatest common factor here is a 5. Now there's one thing I've forgotten. The sign of the factor needs to match the box that it's closest to. So this becomes a negative 5 and this becomes a negative 1. So my 2 factors are 6x minus 1 times 3x minus 5. Checking this one, if you multiply, you should end up with what's in the box. If you did it right, the multiplication will work, and in this case it does. Oops. try the trinomial grouping. Raise it up a little bit. Trinomial grouping. If it's a trinomial, we know we're going to use a box just like we did for grouping. So let's begin with what we know. We know that the term with the highest degree goes in the first box. We know the term with the least degree goes in the last box. The problem comes with this middle term. How do we split those x's up so that they fit in here? Do we want 1 and 2 or 2 and 1? With 3 it's easy. It has to be either 1 or 2, right? But anyway, here's how you do it. The big X is what tells you how to split it. This is the addic. It's A times C in the top, and in the bottom, that's the basement. We write our middle term. So 2x squared minus 20 is minus 40x squared. And in the bottom, we have minus 3x. We're looking for two numbers which multiply to the top and add to the bottom. So we know there's going to be an x here and an x here. Two numbers that multiply to 40. Well, how about 8 and 5 multiply to 40? And if one of them is negative, they will add to 3. And we want more negatives than positives, so let's make negative 8 right there. So here's how we split up our x's. It wasn't the way you expected. It was minus 8x and positive 5x. Okay. Now we go ahead and group. Greatest common factor is 2x. Greatest common factor is 5. Greatest common factor is just x. Greatest common factor, this is a tricky one. Think that through. Let's try 4 is the greatest common factor. And the sign is negative so that it matches the box it's closest to. Let's double check. Does our multiplication work out? It does. So our two factors are 2x plus 5 and x minus 4. One thing that you need to learn how to do today is use this decision tree to be able to completely factor a complicated polynomial. You might need to use more than one of those factoring techniques. Here are the steps. The first factoring technique is always GCF. Always, always check to see if there is a number or a variable that goes into all the terms in your polynomial. After you factor out the GCF, if there is one, you look at the number of terms. If there are 4 terms, you're going to do grouping using an area model. And if there are 3 terms, you are going to do trinomial grouping, which is the box, using the x to split up the middle terms. So basically, you could think of it as turning it into a 4-term polynomial. So use the x and then the box. Okay. Let's give one a try. Here's our polynomial. First step, always check, is there a greatest common factor that goes into all the terms? In this case, it's clear. It's easy with the 5s. There's a 5. So we ask ourselves, what do I have to multiply 5 by to get 30x squared? It would be 6x squared. What do I multiply 5 by to get negative 25x? Negative 5x. What do I multiply 5 by to get negative 30? It's negative 6. We are not done yet, though. This is our first factor, but this trinomial might still be able to be factored. This is a trinomial, so we've done GCF. Now we need to split it up and make it into a 4-term polynomial and then do grouping. So I actually like to start with a box. First term goes here. Last term goes here. This negative 5x, how are we going to write that? We have to use the x. Let's start with the a times c in the top. That would be negative 36x squared. The b goes in the bottom. That's negative 5x. Okay. We know we're going to have an x here and an x here. How do we get negative 5x? Let's try 9 and 4 have a difference of 5. If one of them is negative, then the top will be negative. And we want more negatives than positives. So that looks like it'll work out. So we'll put negative 9x here, and we'll put positive 4x here. Greatest common factors. Let's start with 3x and 2, 2x, and negative 3. Does our multiplication work out all the way across? Looks like it does. So now we come back. Our first factor is a 5. Second factor is 3x plus 2 from the top. Third factor is 2x minus 3. This is the answer. One more thing you need to learn. If you have a polynomial that's written in descending order, and the leading coefficient is negative, maybe there's just a negative sign, or maybe there's a negative 2 or a negative 3, then you need to factor out the negative sign with your GCF. You might have to just factor out a negative 1. So this is the same thing as this. What changed? Can you see that all the signs inside the polynomial changed when we took out a negative 1? Why do we have to do that? Here's why. If you just try and factor it like this, then some of you are going to end up with this as your factors, and some of you are going to end up with this. Can you see how the signs are just different? By convention, so that we all get the same answer, we need to factor it out as negative 1 times x minus 6 times x minus 7. Let's give it a try. Okay. We start with negative b minus 20b minus 36. First thing I'm going to do, let's say that that's the same thing as negative 1 times, change all the signs, b squared plus 20b plus 36. I've managed to change all the signs. Now I need to do my trinomial grouping here. So I'm going to start with my area model. B squared here, 36 here. The 20b we have to break up. Let's use the x. The a times c would be 36b squared. The 20b goes in the basement. I've got a b on both sides. Now I have to figure out how to find two numbers that multiply to 36 and add to 20. I've got it. It's 18.